"You're not welcome at Christmas." Those 5 words from my own son shattered everything I thought I knew about family. After years of sacrifice, I was cast aside like a stranger. But instead of begging for a seat at their table, I made one call. By New Year's, their entire world was collapsing. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. Michael couldn't look at me, his eyes fixed on the polished marble coffee table I'd helped him choose. His wedding band caught the light, trembling slightly as his hands tightened. I sat back against the leather couch, the one I'd paid for, staring at the silk curtains I'd bought and the hardwood floors that had come from my second mortgage. My chest felt hollow. Every detail of that living room bore my fingerprints, yet I was being told I didn't belong. My son's shoulders curved inward, bracing himself like a boy again, ashamed but too weak to stop it. The candles smelled of vanilla, expensive and impersonal, masking the bitter truth. I had been replaced. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. Instead, I rose slowly, each step heavier than the last. Outside, the December air slapped me awake. I slid into my truck, closed the door, and let the silence settle. Then I smiled. One quiet smile, the kind born not of joy, but of clarity. I pulled out my phone, dialed one number, and spoke calmly, as if arranging a business transaction. It was finished in minutes. By New Year's, their mortgage lifeline was gone. And that was only the beginning. Justice was coming, and arrogance would be punished. My name is Dennis Flores. I am 62, a contractor who has built small homes and remodels through 4 decades of early mornings, sore knees, and coffee strong enough to wake a street. Spokane is home, especially in December, when the air smells like wood smoke and neighbors wrap their shrubs with strings of lights. I have lived alone since Maria passed 8 years ago. She was my wife, my compass, the one who could pull the ache out of a bad day with a laugh, the one who believed I could build almost anything if I measured twice and cut once. The house still keeps her voice. When the heater kicks on, I hear her say, "Put on your sweater before you touch that thermostat." When the porch light flickers, I hear her remind me to climb the ladder, careful, steady, one rung at a time. Grief teaches you that love remains in the ordinary. Michael is my only child. I raised him to say please, to stack the dishes without being asked, to look a person in the eye and mean his word. When his mother died, we folded our grief into work. He finished college, I kept the business afloat. When he met Isabella, I tried to welcome what he loved. She was shiny where life had sanded me down. New suits, perfect nails, the kind of confidence that reaches a room before the person does. I told myself that was youth. I told myself love makes room. I made a lot of room, then more still, telling myself a father's job is to keep the wind off his child's face even when the wind shifts and comes from the boy himself. The ledger of it sits in numbers, but each number is a day of my life. We start with $47,000 for their down payment. My own house was paid down far enough that a second mortgage could cover it. I remember the loan officer's tie, narrow blue stripes over white. He cleared his throat and asked if I was sure. He said, "Mr. Flores, you're putting a lot at risk for someone else's investment. I heard sons don't count as someone else." I signed anyway. The pen made a hard sound on the desk that no one else noticed. I drove home proud and a little scared, thinking about Maria's smile if she had seen our boy's first front door key land in his palm. Then came the monthly transfer, $2,800, the 15th of every month like clockwork. 60 months is $168,000. It did not feel like math at first. It felt like helping, like breathing into a paper bag until the panic passed. When their car needed tires, I paid. When the water heater hissed, I paid. When Michael lost his job for a stretch and said, "Temporary, Dad, just temporary," I nodded and set more reminders on my calendar that looked like rent, but were labeled love. I ate peanut butter sandwiches at lunch and told myself I had developed a taste for them. I turned down fishing trips and said, next year. Next year kept moving. If you put all the numbers on one page, the running total lands around $237,468, give or take. Take a receipt that fell behind a drawer, including an $18,000 kitchen upgrade and a windstorm roof I covered without blinking. That number isn't just a sum. It is Maria's life insurance we saved in case of bad news that came anyway. It is the extra into my retirement account that never made it there. It is new tires for my truck I ran bald, another season. It is a porch light that flickered for 2 winters because I kept telling myself I had time. You don't see what something costs while you're paying it. You see it when the balance is memory. People ask why a man would do that when they hear the total. I did it because I am a father. Because the night Michael was born, I promised the small, shocked face in my hands that I would be a roof over him. Because when Maria was sick, he sat on the edge of her bed and read her a chapter every night. And I remembered the boy who used to fall asleep on my chest, with his hair smelling like laundry soap. Because I believed that love given became love returned. I held that belief like a lantern in a storm. I still want to. Our history lives in pictures. There is a row of frames on Michael's hallway wall. In the early ones, I am large in the Karaik background, kneeling to tie a shoe, holding a bicycle seat, steadying a life. As the years go on, I shrink. In the last frame where I can still find my face, I am a shoulder on the edge at his wedding, out of focus, almost an accident. Maria used to switch out photos every spring, dusting the glass, saying, "Look how he's grown, Dennis." After she died, I kept telling myself I would print new ones. I didn't. It hurt to choose one moment over another once the moments were all I had. Holidays were our anchor. Maria baked pan dulce and braided garland from ribbon she kept in a chocolate tin. On Christmas Eve, we would put on the same old record that popped at the start of side 2. Michael would sneak an extra tamale from the steamer and grin at his mother as if rules were suggestions made to be broken by sons who washed the pot afterward. We took slow drives to see lights in South Hill neighborhoods. Maria called out the good ones. I drove at a crawl so we could study every window like a page in a storybook. Afterwards, she would pour hot chocolate into mugs that burned your hands just enough to feel alive. I wanted grandchildren. I wanted a high chair next to the corner of the table where the varnish is thin from years of plates. I wanted to carve a wooden step stool with a name on it and tell the same story every Thanksgiving about how the stool came to be. I wanted to show a child how to sand with the grain and not against it, to let them hold the level and declare a shelf good enough for the world. Hope is not a number, but it might as well be when you keep moving money, believing it purchases a seat close to a future you can smell but cannot see. Spokane is a map of my vows. Fifth is the street with the bank where I signed the second mortgage. Lincoln is where I took the home equity loan after Michael's layoff. A lobby with a fern and a candy jar the teller kept for kids. Division is the road I have driven at dawn more times than I can count. A straight line that understands a man who gets up before the sun because the sun expects to find him working. Grand is the stoplight where I once saw a father lifting a red bicycle into a minivan, and I remembered the day I taught Michael to ride on a parking lot with chalk lines like lanes to nowhere. Every corner of this town can tell you what I paid and why. There were signs I refused to read. Isabella's way of sorting people into our kind and not our kind. The day she said my boots scratched her floors, the floors my money bought. The way Michael's voice took on her edges when he was tired, a crispness that cut. I told myself she was nervous. Hosting can make people sharp. I told myself new marriages wobble and then they settle. I told myself patience is love with its sleeves rolled up. What I did not tell myself was that patience can also be a mask for fear. The truth gathered slowly, as truths do. It sat beside me when I balanced my checkbook and shrugged. It stood behind me when I chose the cheaper coffee and said nothing. It rode in the truck when I drove to replace a garbage disposal in a rental on a Sunday, because that extra $100 would buy the groceries I could no longer put on a card. The truth was simple. I had become an account to draft from, a dependable pipeline that carried money from the part of my life where it was earned to the part of their life where it vanished. My feelings were treated like overdraft notices, annoying, ignorable, best left unopened. On the day Michael told me I was not welcome for Christmas, I saw the map and the ledger and the photographs at once. I saw Maria in her favorite chair saying, "Dennis, you always try to fix everything with your hands, but some breaks are not for fixing." I saw the boy I raised standing in a living room that looked like success and felt like distance, unable to lift his eyes to mine. I saw myself in the window, older than I feel, tired in a way sleep does not cure, still believing there was a right word that could straighten bent timber. The stakes were not just dollars, they were dignity. They were the right to sit at a table and bring the turkey and tell the story of the year without asking for permission to exist in a room paid for with my past. They were whether a man keeps the pieces of himself he has spent a lifetime shaping or trades them away, one consent at a time, for a belonging that never arrives. I did not yet know what I would do. I only knew the ground had been moving for years and I had finally felt the tilt. When I drove home through the early dark, the city looked the same, but sounded different. Tires hissed on wet pavement. A bus opened its doors to no one. In a window, a tree blinked in the slow rhythm of a sleeping heart. I parked in my driveway with the crack down the middle and sat with the heater blowing on my hands. The porch light flickered when I climbed the steps. Inside, the quiet met me like an old dog, thumped its tail and lay down. I set my keys on the counter, and the metal on laminate made a small sound that told the truth better than words. I had spent years paying to stand outside a door I built. Soon I would decide whether to keep knocking or to turn, finally, and build my own door again. We sat in Michael's living room, with the mantel clock ticking like a metronome set too slow. The 12-foot tree reached almost to the ceiling, silver and white ornaments catching light that softened nothing. Vanilla candles warmed the air. The silk curtains I'd bought hung perfect and heavy, and the hardwood floor I had financed gleamed like a finished promise. This was a room I had helped build, and it felt like a room I was visiting. "Dad," Michael said, rubbing his wedding band with his thumb, "there's something we should talk about." He glanced at the marble coffee table, the one we picked together on a rainy April afternoon, like it could answer for him. "It's about Christmas." "What about Christmas?" Kept my voice easy, the way a man does when he already feels the drop. "Isabella's parents are staying the whole week," he said. "They're very particular about traditions. They have their own way of doing things." "Their own way," I repeated. "What way is that exactly?" He didn't look up. "They prefer a certain atmosphere. Conversation about books, art, current events, classical music. You know, I know how preference works," I said. "Where do I fit in their atmosphere?" He took a breath, shoulders inching higher, then let it go. "It would be easier if you didn't come this year." The words were simple and heavy. The lights on the tree seemed to slow. I watched him fold into himself like a page bent to keep a place. "Easier for who?" I asked. "For everyone," he said too quickly. "Dad, please don't make this harder than it has to be. We can do something the weekend after, just us. We'll make it up to you." "The weekend after," I repeated, tasting how it sounded. Like rescheduling a dentist. He winced. "It's 1 year. Next year will be different." "Michael," I said, and he finally met my eyes. "I promised your mother I would keep our family together. I have paid for the roof over your head, the table you set, the floor you stand on. You are telling me that the people who are visiting don't want the man who paid for this room to sit in it. It isn't like that, he said, small. It's just order. Expectations. I don't want conflict. Your mother didn't mind the truth when it was spoken kindly, I said. She minded cruelty dressed like manners. I let the silence settle. Tell me plainly, am I welcome here for Christmas? His jaw moved once before the answer came. No, he said. You won't be welcome here for Christmas. The room heard it. The clock did too. I looked at the tree, at the ornaments that pretended the past was only bright. I looked at the couch and remembered signing the receipt. I looked at my son and saw a good man hiding behind the word easier because it felt safer than saying cowardice. I did not say that word. I stood. Where should I go on Christmas Day? I asked. Aunt Rosa? He offered weakly. Or we'll do dinner the weekend after. I promise. You're asking me to be a holiday you can move, I said. Holidays don't move. People do. Dad, he said, palms out. I'm trying. So am I answered. I've been trying for 5 years. He started to speak again. Explanations lined up like the ornaments that matched from branch to branch. I let him finish. Then I put my hand on the back of the chair to steady a feeling that didn't need steadying and said, Thank you for telling me plainly. I turned toward the door, my decision not yet fully formed, but my dignity already awake. In the kitchen doorway sat the professional mixer I bought when Isabella decided. Hosting required equipment. It gleamed unused, a stage prop between performances. Crown molding ran the room like a ribbon, purchased on a card I paid down in slow inches. Every object had a story with my name on the receipt. He followed my gaze and flushed. I know you've done a lot, he said. You know the numbers, I answered. Do you know what they added up to in me? He swallowed. I know you love me. I do, I said. That's why I'm asking one more time. If I show up with my turkey and my music and the stories your mother loved, am I welcome in your house on Christmas Day? He stared at the table, and the answer arrived without words. The absence was loud enough to hear. All right, I said. Then I'll give you something easier. What's that? The truth. I kissed 2 fingers and touched an ornament Maria would have chosen, then put my coat on and carried what was left of the afternoon outside. The phone rang on my kitchen table before the daylight had settled. Isabella's name glowed bright. I let it buzz once, twice, then answered because some things should be heard live. Dennis, she said, sweet and crisp. Michael told me you took the plans personally. I took them literally, I said. There's a difference. Well, she continued, I just want to clear the air. This is about aesthetics. My parents enjoy a certain refinement. Think classical music, soft conversation, curated wine. We're keeping things elegant. Say what you mean, I said. I am too old to untangle ribbons. She chuckled politely. Your kind of cooking is very regional. All that heavy, spicy food. It overwhelms sensitive palates. And the loud music, the jokes about job sites. My father debates in French. My mother quotes Rilke. We want an elevated tone. You understand, I understand hunger and work and gratitude, I said. Those play well in any language. You're being defensive, she said. This isn't about you. It's about managing atmosphere. Breeding and education come with expectations. Some stories fit, some don't. Breeding, I repeated, tasting the old ugliness in a new bottle. Tell me how you describe my place when you're not pretending to be polite. Her sigh clicked through the line. Dennis, don't do this. You're skilled with your hands. We appreciate that. But there are tables where discretion matters, where not everyone needs to perform. Maria knew that. She blended. She didn't make waves. She understood certain spaces weren't meant for her. The words landed with a small, clean violence. I looked at Maria's picture by the stove. She was laughing, flower on her cheek, a holiday years ago. Maria had more class-stirring masa with a wooden spoon than you will ever purchase with a gold card, I said quietly. She taught your husband to say thank you before he knew what it cost to mean it. You're proving my point, Isabella said, voice cooling. Emotion over intellect. This is why we curate. Anyway, since you'll be free on Christmas Eve, I need a favor. Alaska Flight 447, baggage claim 3. Please pick up my parents. They have 2 large suitcases and a garment bag. Wear that blue shirt from Michael's graduation. They notice presentation. No, I said. Silence expanded like a room you thought was smaller. Did you say no? I did, I said. Try a car service. They specialize in presentation. This attitude will not serve you, she said. You are not in our league. You are background. That's the last time you will say what I am, I answered. From now on, I will do that job. Are you threatening to embarrass us? She asked. I am finished subsidizing you, I said, and let the words sit, solid as a closed door. She recovered briskness. You'll regret this. People notice who behaves good, I said. Let them notice. I ended the call and stood still long enough to hear the heater hum and a small house accept a boundary. Something old, unclenched. I poured coffee, tasted its clean heat, and recognized the first true thing I had done for myself in far too long. I drove back to their block at dusk to tie off the knot. The lights I'd once hung stitched a bright tunnel over the street. I walked to the door, opened it, and found Michael in the hallway, startled. I came for one sentence, I said. Tell your in-laws this from me. Feliz Navidad. He blinked, searching for a reply to change what was true. None came. I won't be at the airport, I added, and I won't be in your budget anymore. I stepped outside. The December air hit cold. The door clicked behind me, final. Their windows glowed. My payment plan glowed, without me inside. I spread the bank statements across the kitchen table and sorted them by year. 5 neat stacks, January through December, each sheet announcing the same withdrawal in calm ink. The calculator woke with a soft beep. I told myself I would total the transfers and move on. Memory disagreed. Every page pulled me back to a month when I said yes and tightened my belt. The first year felt like help. The second felt like commitment. By the third, I called it love and let the habit do my thinking. $2,800 on the 15th, again and again. I wrote the figures in a straight column, drew lines and carried ones the way Maria taught Michael at this very counter. 33,600. Again, 33,600. The pen cut a shallow groove through the paper. When I reached the 5th year, my hand hesitated. I copied the total twice as if repetition could shrink it. It did not. The columns stood like fence pickets around a yard I funded but never used. The math measured more than money. It measured peanut butter mornings, thermostat afternoons, quiet evenings when I skipped coffee with friends because the 15th was coming. It measured tires I drove bald and the dentist appointment I moved 3 times. The numbers blurred. I wiped my glasses on my shirt and tried to see like a bookkeeper. All I could see was a widower paying not to be seen. I started fresh on a yellow pad. Down payment, $47,000. Kitchen remodel, $18,000. Monthly transfers, $168,000. Roof and repairs, $12,500. Utilities, furniture, taxes. I covered because it was easier that way. Add 10, $255,500, give or take. The small shames I never saved receipts for. I circled the total. The circle looked like a mouth silently shouting. I heard Maria in my head the way I did when a job tried to own me. Enough, Den. Step back. Cut clean. Finish true. My hands steadied. I stacked the statements, squared the edges, and turned the phone so the light hit the keypad. Numbers built the trap. A number could spring it. The automated voice offered English and Spanish. I pressed for a person and gave my name, my account, the pieces strangers need to prove you are yourself. A woman answered with a smile I could hear. How can I help you today, Mr. Flores? I need to cancel a recurring transfer, I said. Of course, she typed. There is a monthly outbound to Wells Fargo, account ending 7423, scheduled on the 15th for 2,800. Is that the one? That is the one. How long have you been making it? 5 years. Would you like it paused or canceled? Canceled, effective immediately. Her keyboard rattled once more. Done. There will be no withdrawal on the 15th. Anything else I can assist with? No, I said, and surprised myself by adding, thank you. The words tasted new. I set the phone down the way you set a tool that has finally done its work. The kitchen was quiet, except for the heater and the small click the fridge makes when it settles. I folded the yellow pad and slid it into the drawer with coupons and rubber bands. Then I carried the paper to the fireplace. I had not used the hearth much since Maria died. She loved a wood fire, the way it perfumed the drapes and made our small house feel like a cabin. I laid the statements on the grate like kindling, tucking edges so the air could find them. One match, then another. The first flames licked the corners as if testing the recipe. A minute later, the totals lifted and curled. The 5th year darkened. The 2nd crumpled to a black petal. The down payment split like a dry leaf and went bright. Heat breathed its language and the stack became a small storm, all edges, then no edges at all. Ash fell soft as flour. I thought of Maria dusting the counter and drawing a heart in the powder before she wiped it clean. I stood until nothing legible remained. When the last column folded into ember, I took down the bottle I had been saving for an occasion that never arrived. I poured 2 fingers into a heavy glass and held it until it warmed. To Maria, I said, to the part of me that forgot I am allowed to stop. The whiskey went down clean, not sweet. My shoulders loosened. I felt the first easy breath I had taken in months. It did not fix a bill or bring back a year, but it returned my name to me. I carried the glass to the back door and opened it to the cold. The night smelled like chimneys and pine. Across town, houses glowed with the kind of lights that tell a story I no longer believed. I closed the door gently and listened to the house settle around me. I stood in the middle of the kitchen and said it plainly so the walls could keep me honest. I will not fund my own disrespect. Not with money, not with silence, not with time I cannot buy back. I will not borrow against my pride to pay interest on someone else's arrogance. I will not put my heart on autopay. The sentence steadied me. It was a line I could build along, straight and true, like a joist you trust to hold. Tomorrow there would be calls to make and habits to break. There might be headlines. There would certainly be noise. Tonight there was a clear table, a canceled transfer, and a fire that had eaten what needed eating. I rinsed the glass, dried it, and set it upside down beside the sink. The house was the same size it had always been, but it fit me better. The man who walked in from the cold was not the man who would walk out again. I woke the next morning with a plan that did not look like a plan to anyone else. It looked like quiet. It looked like tea, steeping while winter light climbed the cabinets in slow squares. At 10:47, Isabella called with the urgency of someone who believes the world is her valet. She announced flight numbers, baggage claim numbers, and an instruction to dress respectably for her parents' arrival. She said, please, as if the word were an ornament. I listened as if I were weighing lumber, and when she finished, I agreed in a tone smooth enough to pass inspection. Then I placed the phone on the counter and let the silence put its hand on my shoulder. Delayed gratification had another name, patience, used as a tool. At 2:15, I sat in my armchair with Earl Grey cooling on the side table and the Sunday paper folded to the crossword. The December sun passed across the carpet in a thin stripe that moved like a second hand. I penciled in postponed for a 12-letter clue that wanted delayed gratification, and the neatness of it made me smile. The phone buzzed. I let it ring once and fall silent. At 2:47, a text asked where I was. At 3 o'clock, the texts turned to stacked questions without punctuation. I filled squares. I refused to fill requests. At 3:30, I brewed more tea and admired how steam walks out of a cup like a man unburdened. At 3:45, an unknown number tried next. I watched it blink, then fade. At 4:15, I unplugged the landline and turned off the cell. A room without ringing is a cathedral for thought. I made a grilled cheese the way Maria taught me. Butter the outside, not the pan, and heated tomato soup until it steamed like a memory of school lunches. I sat at the table and ate my dinner slowly, while, somewhere across town, 3 people learned what it feels like to treat a person as function and find themselves stranded without the function. When the pounding finally arrived at my door, I was ready for its volume. I opened, spoke once, and closed. The click of the deadbolt sounded like a small verdict read into the record. 3 mornings later, the counterpunch arrived in clean type from page 3 of the Spokane Review. My photograph, clipped from an old company page, sat above a headline that called me a businessman who abandoned an elderly couple during a holiday storm. Below it, the article choreographed pity and outrage like a fundraiser gala. The weather, according to them, had turned dangerous. The couple had waited 4 hours in frigid conditions. They had tried to reach me repeatedly, concerned for my well-being. The sentences wove themselves into a sweater of civic concern, warm enough to hide the draft underneath. The piece never mentioned Christmas dinner. The piece never mentioned exclusion. It mentioned only an old man who had failed at decency. I put my finger on the word storm and remembered the blue sky. I put my finger on frigid and thought of the jacket draped over my chair that afternoon. The lie was not even ambitious. It was tidy. It used the tone of community concern to paint me as erratic. It left out Christmas, the exclusion, the demand for chauffeur service issued by the hostess who had barred me. It left out 5 years of money. It left out Maria. Lies choose their omissions with care, and the careful part is where they admit what they fear to say aloud. I finished the article, folded it once, then twice, and slid it beside the coffee cup like a tool I would need at a job site later in the week. What mattered was not the insult. What mattered was the path the insult had taken to reach that page. People learned to play the town long before they learned to play fair. Cody had spent a lifetime in rooms where handshakes carry favors. He would have known who to call, who to take to lunch, which editor needed a story to fill a soft news slot 2 days before Christmas. The play was obvious. I could respect a straightforward play even as I dismantled it. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was interested. Anger is fuel. Interest is a map. I opened the laptop and began with the names I already knew: Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins, Isabella Flores. People say the internet never forgets. What they forget is that it also never sleeps. Public profiles tell stories no one means to tell. I found golf photos and gala photos and a ribbon cutting where Cody stood with a grin wide enough to pass for sincerity at a thumbnail. He listed his board roles: treasurer here, committee head there, a network stitched from breakfasts and charity. Auctions and checks written in the correct amount. Catherine's feed was a calendar of refinement. Charity lunches, wine tastings, a book club where the books photographed better than they read. The captions spoke fluent, careful, feeling grateful. Blessed to be with our circle. The circle looked tight until you saw how much of it depended on performance. I scrolled, took notes, and did not judge beyond the facts. Facts do enough when you place them next to each other and let them hum. Isabella's public posts told a different story. Our beautiful home, she wrote, posing in a kitchen my card balance could still feel. Hosting is a love language, she wrote, and tagged an expensive restaurant the same week she had texted Michael about a late utility bill. There was a photo of the 12-foot tree in the living room I had financed twice over. There was a story about their hosting skills that landed like a knife against the cutting board. She had archived nothing. Pride seldom does. Michael's LinkedIn, which I had checked with pride when he was hired and with worry when he was between jobs, now offered a small, bright thread. In his recent activity, I saw a new connection. Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor at the Spokane Review, the name on my article. I felt nothing dramatic. I felt the satisfaction of a carpenter discovering that a wall hides a door. I clicked. Patricia's page showed years in local media, a steady climb, a specialty in features that mine the human condition like a quarry everybody drives past. The editor above her liked posts from business associations. When I searched those names, Cody's committee appeared like a watermark under a lamp. I took a breath and let my hands do what they know. I built a case the way I would build a frame. First, gather the material. I printed 5 years of bank statements and highlighted the 15th in yellow until the dates glowed like runway lights. I printed the down payment transaction and the kitchen remodel charge. I pulled receipts from a folder labeled household that had no business holding someone else's life. I took screenshots of posts and preserved them in a simple document with dates and links printed beneath each image in clear 12-point type. The printer hummed like a small worker, pleased to be given a job with a purpose. Lie, I wrote in the margin, next to storm. False, I wrote next to frigid. Missing context, I wrote in careful block letters, next to concern. I went through the article line by line and translated each choice into a label. Yes, a couple had waited, but because they assumed obligation where there was none. Yes, calls had been made, but after a boundary was crossed and named. Yes, the holidays can be hard. They are harder when someone extracts your dignity with a smile. When the margins were full, I stacked the pages and backed away to see if the shape made sense. It did. It said, "Tell the truth, in order, and let their friends hear it with their own eyes on the she's." Paper. It said, "Do not shout. Do not accuse more than the facts accuse." It said, "Bring receipts in both senses of the word and let the math speak the language everyone understands when the check arrives." The next step was stagecraft. Truth is sturdy, but presentation helps it through the door. I bought a black briefcase with hinges that did not squeak. I bought good paper, heavy enough to feel. I made 12 packets because Isabella's event post promised 12 for dinner. Each packet had a cover sheet. Financial support timeline for Michael and Isabella Flores, prepared by Dennis Flores. Under it, the bank highlights, the down payment copy, the remodel invoice, the running total, and the screenshots. At the back, I placed the article with my red ink labels in the margin like road signs that point to daylight. Wardrobe mattered. I tried on 3 jackets before I put on the navy suit I had worn to Maria's funeral. It fit differently now. Grief had broadened and narrowed me in ways a tailor could not predict. I tied a conservative tie and polished my shoes until I could see the outline of a man who had come to say his piece, without apology. I looked in the mirror and said hello to Maria, who had always straightened my collar before we walked into any room where words mattered. "Wish me courage," I said. The mirror stayed quiet, and somehow that helped. I picked Kendall Yards because that was their neighborhood, and because the streets there welcome cars parked legally and witnesses who arrive on time. I checked the calendar. Christmas Eve. The invitation had been public, 6:30 for cocktails, 7 for dinner. If I arrived at 6:45, they would be seated, served, and certain. Certainty is when truth does the most work. The drive across town felt like the approach to a job site on the morning a roof goes up. Everything staged, everything measured, no drama, just work. The packets sat in the briefcase on the passenger seat. I did not listen to music. I did not rehearse lines. Over-rehearsal is a cousin to panic. I kept my hands at 10 and 2 and watched the city move through its holiday shapes. A boy in a puffy coat dragged a sled through a yard with not enough snow and too much joy. A woman carried a pie like a secret. A neighbor tested lights on a gutter and nodded when they burned steady. Their block was bright enough to be seen from the cross street. Cars lined both sides. Coats on hangers filled the front hall. Through the window, I could see a table set with a white cloth and wine glasses that bragged with their thinness. I parked across from their driveway and sat for a full minute with the engine off, feeling my heartbeat slow until it matched the simple rhythm of being alive. This was not revenge. This was correction. This was a counterweight added to a tilted scale so that the beam could find level again. I stepped out and closed the car door softly. Gravel ticked under my shoes as I walked to the path. My breath showed in short clouds. The wreath on their door was tasteful and expensive, berries arranged with the practiced eye of a florist who knows how to sell the feeling of winter to a neighborhood that prefers it. Decorative. I put my hand on the knob and did not turn it yet. I let the laughter come through the wood and describe the room to me. Glasses touched. Someone said, "Darling." Someone said, "We do it this way in our family." The door was unlocked, I suspected, because safety is part of the story told in neighborhoods where people know the price per square foot of feeling safe. I turned the knob and entered. Warm air met me, and the smell of food made by hands that did not know the taste of sacrifice drifted from the kitchen. I shut the door behind me, not to trap anyone, but to keep the winter outside where it belonged. The hallway runner cushioned my steps. On the console table, a stack of embossed place cards waited for someone to notice their prettiness. I paused at the dining room threshold and read the scene like a blueprint. Isabella mid-gesture, gold bracelet catching light. Michael at her right, lips parted, the start of a smile that did not reach his eyes. Cody and Catherine opposite each other, heads tilted with the cheer of their own approval. Friends arranged like a chorus, eager to affirm the melody of the evening. 12 plates, 12 candles, 12 comfortable certainties about who belonged and who served. I held the briefcase in my left hand and felt its weight like something honest. "Good evening," I said, and the quiet after those two words was the cleanest quiet I have ever heard. Not empty. Ready. The plan had reached the door. Now the truth would do the rest. Heat rose from the dining room like a soft wall. Glassware chimed once and went quiet. Vanilla candles drifted through the air, mixing with rosemary and butter. 12 faces turned as if pulled by the same string. Isabella's bracelet caught a spark from the chandelier. Michael's napkin stayed crushed in his fist. Cody straightened, preparing to perform. Catherine's smile froze halfway, bright and brittle. I felt the weight of the navy suit across my shoulders, the steadiness in my feet. The tree blinked in the corner, 12 feet of glitter I had paid for in one way or another. Conversation died the instant I crossed the threshold. Chairs creaked. Knives paused above plates. Isabella's voice rose an inch and then disappeared, like steam meeting cold air. I nodded once to the room, not asking permission to exist in a space I had financed. The scent of vanilla turned cloying. The air carried heat, but not welcome. Michael's eyes darted from me to Isabella and back again, the seesaw he had been riding for years. Catherine's pearls held still, as if even they refused to rattle. Cody reached for his wine and did not drink. Every element announced what the room wanted and what it feared. A quiet scene, a controlled story, a man who would retreat. I set down the briefcase and let the silence become mine. I moved to the sideboard and opened the briefcase. The latches clicked like small gavels. "Thank you for making time," I said, and placed the first packet in front of the nearest guest. "This is for you." I worked clockwise, a contractor walking a tape around a foundation, exact and calm. "Bank statements highlighted by month," I told a man in a charcoal jacket. I set another on bone china rimmed with gold. Receipts and totals. Another. Documentation of public statements. The packets made a soft thud, a drumbeat around the table. Pages were thick with yellow lines and red margins. Numbers did not tremble. They simply told their story. A woman in a cranberry dress touched the top page with 2 careful fingers. A younger couple leaned together, reading aloud dates without meaning to. At each setting, I gave the same tools. Statement summaries, copies of checks, transfer confirmations, and screenshots of posts taken when gratitude was fashionable. Start wherever you like, I said. The totals all meet in the same place. I laid a packet by Cody's elbow. He did not reach for it. Catherine did, and then stopped, as if touching proof might stain. I slid the remaining copy toward Isabella. She lifted her chin and pretended distance. Michael stared at his name on the account header and did not turn the page. Down payment, I narrated for the room, tapping the first section. $47,000 drawn from my home equity line. Signatures here and here. I turned a page. Kitchen renovation. Granite, appliances, electrical, $18,000. Another page. Transfers. $2,800 on the 15th of every month. 60 entries. I let the yellow bars do the speaking. They marched across the statements like seasons. The totals sat at the bottom like a poured foundation. $168,000 in mortgage payments, plus the rest, plus the taxes, plus the furniture when plain oak was not chic enough for company. The man in the charcoal jacket raised his eyebrows as if a beam had sagged. "You kept records?" he said. "I build for a living," I replied. "Records keep roofs on." Further around the table, someone ran a finger down the column of dates. 5 years, she whispered. I placed the newspaper reprint beside each stack. "For context," I said, "same week these transfers cleared." Next to it, a single sheet indexed the screenshots, the holiday posts, the check-ins at restaurants, the caption that called a remodel a blessing. The room's rhythm became paper on linen, breath on numbers, quiet on pride. Someone's chair creaked. A guest coughed. I folded my hands behind the briefcase and waited for gravity to work. Money has weight when you stop pretending it floats. One by one, the packets opened fully. One by one, the pages turned. Faces moved through stages, curiosity, calculation, then something like nausea, when math met memory. At the head of the table, Cody finally touched his copy. He flipped directly to the totals, then to the article, then to the red ink at the margins. Catherine's eyes took in the red words and blinked twice fast. Isabella kept her face smooth, but her breathing changed. Michael folded his napkin into a rope and untwisted it again. No one laughed. The chandelier hummed. Silver waited on porcelain. When the last guest received the last packet, I closed the briefcase and let my hands drop to my sides. "Everything you need is there," I said. "Everything I was told to keep quiet about." Cody leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers templed. "Generosity is private," he said smoothly. "We don't broadcast family support." The pearl-clad elder at the far end, hair silver, posture unbreakable, tapped a fingernail against a statement. "Family support is not the same as siphoning a pension," she said, "and this isn't private anymore." "You put him in the paper." The words settled like stones. Catherine's smile thinned. "No one put him anywhere," she protested. "A reporter heard a story. A reporter heard your spin." The elder replied. Pages turned again, not with curiosity now, but with purpose. The woman in the cranberry dress lifted the down payment page. $47,000 from his home equity, she read, slow and even, initialed by him and the loan officer. April, 5 years ago. She changed sheets. $18,000 for the kitchen, granite and appliances. She placed the paper flat. And 60 transfers of $2,800. That's not a favor. That's a second mortgage he carried alone. A man with a linen pocket square slid his chair back 2 inches. "This is a pattern of dependence," he said, "and a pattern of erasing the giver." Isabella tried to steady the table with posture. "Dennis offered," she said brightly. "He's always insisted." We tried to refuse. Michael's eyes snapped to her and then away. He saw the signatures again, in his mind, if not on the page. "Offered," the elder repeated. "You excluded him from Christmas dinner and then fed him to a columnist." She turned to me. "Is it true the day they say you abandoned them was 52 degrees and sunny?" "Yes," I said. "I checked the report twice." "So the storm was a narrative device," the pocket square said dryly. Conversation began to tilt, the way a table tilts when a heavy platter is set down on one end. Catherine reached for charm. "Friends," she soothed, "let's not jump to conclusions. Holiday emotions run high. Math runs higher," the woman in cranberry said. She raised her packet so others could see the highlighted rivers. "He paid while you posted. He paid while you entertained. He paid while you called him unfit for your conversation." Chairs murmured as people adjusted. Judgment was taking a seat. "This isn't tasteful," Catherine hissed. "Neither is laundering contempt with centerpieces," the elder answered. She pointed to the article. "He was slandered because he stopped paying. That is not a storm. That is retaliation." Michael swallowed. His voice stayed buried. The pocket square looked to Cody. "Did you contact the editor?" Cody smiled without teeth. "I know people." "I made a call. Small town. Small towns remember," the elder said, "and they notice who uses their memory to hurt." Cody's temper flashed. "You all enjoy your moral superiority," he snapped. "I protect my family. I won't apologize for expecting decency from an older man who abandons elders in public." "You're younger than I am," the woman in pearls said calmly, "and you abandoned decency at the door." She turned to Isabella. "Tell the truth." Isabella's jaw worked. She reached for the rope she knew. Contempt. "He cooks the same food every time," she said. "Spicy, loud. He doesn't belong with my parents." The room stopped harder than before. Someone set a glass down very carefully. I let the silence hold. "My food kept your lights on," I said evenly. "My money kept your mortgage current. My hands paid for the oven you brag about. And you told your parents I would embarrass you." Catherine tried to pivot. "No one said embarrass," she protested. "We simply have different traditions." I lifted the reprint. "Holiday storm," I read. "Lie." "Frigid conditions," I read. "False." "Erratic behavior," I read. "Missing context." I laid the paper flat. Truth is simple. I stopped funding people who called me unworthy. The pocket square pointed at the totals. "Numbers have tone when they repeat," he said. "This tone says dependence and contempt." Michael finally spoke, voice frayed. "Dad, I didn't know about the article." "Your wife knew," I answered. "Your in-laws arranged it. And you knew the money moved in only one direction." He stared down at the bank columns as if they might arrange themselves into a kinder truth. "I thought we'd make it right," he whispered. "After the holidays?" "After the holidays is what people say when they plan to leave a mess under someone else's tree," I replied. He closed his eyes. The elder looked to Cody. "You can correct this now," she offered. "Apologize and start paying your own way." Cody laughed once, a dry scrape. "I don't take orders at my own daughter's table." "It isn't your table," the woman in cranberry said. "It's his transfers and his cards and his labor dressed in your taste." Isabella pushed her chair back. "Enough," she said. "This is abuse. He barged into our home to humiliate us." "I entered a house I bought for your pride and protections I financed," I said. "Humiliation is what you printed." The charity friend slid her packet toward Isabella. "Read the dates," she said. "Read the captions you wrote next. to purchases you didn't cover. Then decide who barged into what. Catherine tried one more lane. Community standing. Dennis, think about how this reflects on you, she warned. You're creating a scene. A scene became necessary when you edited the last one, I said. I prefer sunlight to rumor. The elder nodded. So do donors, she added, and voters, and neighbors. We aren't blind, Catherine. Cody put his hand flat on the table. If one more person lectures me in my presence, he said, they can leave. The pocket square stood. Then I'll go, he said, but not before I tell you to your face that this is shameful. He turned to me. Sir, thank you for the clarity. He looked around, and for the record, it was 52 degrees and sunny. A murmur of agreement rolled the length of the table. Michael spoke again, smaller. Dad, I'm sorry, he said. I chose quiet over right. I nodded once. We'll speak when there aren't witnesses, I said. He nodded back, grateful for a door that hadn't closed yet. Isabella scoffed. He loves performances, she said. Tonight, he found an audience. I found a spine, I said, and a ledger. I gathered the spare copy and closed the briefcase with a gentle click. The room waited for whatever line would end this chapter. I lifted the briefcase. Enjoy dinner, I said, lighter now that the beam had found level. It's the last one I'll be paying for. The line hung in the warm air like steam before it becomes part of the room. I stepped away from the table. The room erupted the moment my back turned. Questions ricocheted across linen. Is this true? How could you? You put him in the paper. When were you going to tell us? Catherine tried to corral tone the way a hostess corrals coats. Everyone, please, she pleaded. The elder in pearls spoke over her. Cody, I'm removing your name from the scholarship committee until this is addressed, she declared. The charity friend added, and I'll be advising the gala board accordingly. Consequences traveled the table faster than excuses. Michael stood. Dad, he began. I raised a hand, not with anger, but with a boundary. Another time, I said, when we can speak without an audience. He nodded, eyes wet, relief and dread braided. Isabella sagged into her chair, staring at the red words beside her fork as if they might smear if she blinked long enough. Catherine examined the guests and made a calculation anyone could see her losing. I walked the hallway past family photos where my face grew smaller the newer the frames became. Vanilla sweetness smelled artificial now. At the console, a framed picture showed Isabella and Michael on these same steps, glasses raised. I remembered the crown molding, the mixer, the property taxes. I opened the front door. Cold air met the heat and the house shivered. On the porch, I paused to let the night slow my pulse. Across the street, a child's paper snowflake hung crooked in a window. From the dining room came one more volley. Apologize to him, from the elder. We'll discuss this privately, from Catherine. I'm done being quiet, from Michael. I closed the door behind me and the voices dulled to a hum. I took the steps down, one measured tread at a time. At the curb, I looked once through the glass at the flames in the fireplace for a heartbeat. I saw Maria the way memory sometimes places her where I need strength. That'll do, I said under my breath. I set the briefcase on the passenger seat and started the engine. The heater blew away the last of the candle-sweet air. I signaled, pulled into the street, and let the block of light fall behind me. The letter came on a Tuesday in March, delivered by certified mail with the kind of finality only a green return receipt can carry. I signed on the porch while crocuses pushed through the soil along the walk. Inside, I slit the envelope with a steak knife and read the headline first. Notice of default. Final demand for payment. The dates lined up like railroad ties. 3 consecutive months missed. Amount due to cure, $8,400 plus late fees within 14 days. Or the lender would initiate foreclosure proceedings on the house I had helped them buy. I set the page on the table and read it again, slower, as if the numbers might blink and change. They didn't. The spring air came through the screen, soft and new, and nothing about it felt like winter anymore. I poured coffee and stood at the sink with the notice in my hand and a steadiness I didn't recognize at first. I realized why. This time, the panic did not belong to me. The weight of consequence had finally found its owners. The house with the silk curtains and the 12-foot tree now had a clock ticking over it, and the hands were not mine to turn back. I folded the notice, slid it back into its envelope, and set it beside the salt. The porch light that used to flicker was steady now. So was I. I looked at Maria's photo on the mantel and told her, quietly, that spring had finally arrived in more ways than one. The silence didn't last. It filled with calls I refused to answer. Isabella first, then Cody and Catherine, rotating numbers like costumes. I blocked one and 3 more arrived. Voicemails stacked up and expired without my ears on them. Week by week, the tone shifted. Outrage to pleading, pleading to logistics, logistics to warnings so thin you could see daylight through them. A friend from Rotary mentioned, gently, that Cody's name had come off a committee. A neighbor who never trades gossip used the word pariah and then apologized for it. At the grocery store, I ran into a couple from their church. They looked past me like I'd turned invisible, not out of spite, but out of fear of choosing sides. The performance class had lost its audience, and the people who once clapped on cue were studying the exits. 97 days after the dinner, the doorbell rang at dusk. I knew my son's shape in the frosted glass. Michael stood there in a suit that had lost its press and eyes that had lost their defiance. He glanced at the fresh paint and the recliner that didn't sag. "Nice place," he said. "It's what happens when you spend on yourself," I answered and stepped aside. He perched on the edge of the couch, hands unsteady. "Dad," he began, "I need to talk about everything." The article? Christmas. "Mom, start anywhere," I said. "I didn't know about the story until after it ran," he said. Cody called a friend who called the editor. Isabella sent the writer context. They pulled your headshot from your old website. The holiday storm was fiction, and they laughed about how fast it printed. He swallowed. And they said Mom was a house cleaner who got lucky. That she knew her place better than you do. What did you do when you heard it? Nothing. I froze. I should have defended you both. You should have, I said. But you didn't. He nodded. The house is in foreclosure. We're $8,400 behind and climbing. Resumes out everywhere. A bank job vanished when the article boomeranged. Isabella won't sell. Her parents say they're tapped out. I don't know what to do. Tell yourself the truth, I said. I brought the manila folder I'd kept after Christmas and opened to the summary. This is the number you never totaled, I said, tapping the line I'd written. $237,468. Down payment, renovation, 60 months at $2,800. Taxes, utilities, furniture, emergencies. 5 years of your father's life in Ledger Inc. I know, he whispered, and I can't ask you for another dollar. I'm not a lender anymore, I said. I forgave the debt when I stopped it. Forgiveness isn't funding. Then what can I ask for? Advice, I said, and accountability. Okay, he said. Sell the house before the bank takes it, I said. Rent what you can afford. Take any honest job today, not the perfect one. Drive one car, eat at home, cancel the performances. Tell the people who taught you to look down that you're done standing on other people's backs. Isabella will hate it. Then she's free to hate it, I said. Respect is a record of choices. And us? He asked. Do I have a chance with you? You didn't lose me, I said. You gave me away. There's a difference, he absorbed it, then nodded. If you want me back, I said, build it. Call when you don't need money. Invite me without asking me to disappear. Show up when there isn't a crisis. His eyes watered. I can do that. I want to good. We both stood. I walked him to the door. The evening held pale gold light. A mower droned down the block. You'll figure the house out, I added. You're a grown man. He touched the jam the way he had at 12. Thanks for the honesty, he said, and for the forgiveness. Use both, I said. He stepped into the spring air, lighter by nothing I could carry for him and everything he could finally carry himself. He looked at the floorboards I'd laid the summer Maria sang in the kitchen and winced. I thought helping meant never saying no, he said. Love lasts because it has limits, I told him. Boundaries keep people decent. If we sell, we can cure the arrears and clear some cards, he said. We'll have to move fast. Then move, I said. Pack boxes instead of excuses. Call the lender before they call you. Show your son how a man truly pays. He drew a breath, wiped his eyes, and squared his shoulders like someone who remembered work. The weeks after Michael's visit unfolded differently than the years before. My mornings no longer started with anxiety over bank withdrawals or phone calls demanding more. Instead, I rose early, brewed coffee strong enough to carry me through quiet reflection, and looked around a house that was finally mine again. The repairs I had put off for half a decade began to take shape. The porch light, once a stuttering reminder of neglect, glowed steady and warm after I replaced the fixture myself. Fresh paint brightened the hallway where Maria's picture hung, no longer a backdrop for guilt, but a centerpiece for gratitude. The cracked concrete in the driveway, something I used to avoid looking at, was patched over one weekend with the help of my neighbor's son. It felt good to sweat for my own home again. Invitations began to arrive, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. Rosa called often, not for money, but for presents. Her children insisted I join them for Sunday dinners, school concerts, and holiday gatherings. At their table, I was never asked to shrink myself, never asked to vanish when company came. I brought tamales the way Maria used to make, and instead of polite dismissal, the plates came back empty with requests for more. In those small moments, surrounded by people who wanted me there, I realized family could be chosen as much as it could be given. My circle was smaller, but it was real. I thought often about the ledger I had kept, the cold tally of $237,468. For years it defined me, each line item a measure of sacrifice without respect. But those numbers no longer dictated my worth. They were gone, and with them the illusion that love could be bought with mortgages, granite counters, or oversized trees. I had finally drawn a line, and in doing so, rediscovered my own value. The truth became simple. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors that stay open only for those who walk through with respect. I had spent too long confusing sacrifice with love, when in reality, love is sustained by dignity. Without dignity, generosity curdles into resentment. Now I understood that saying no was not cruelty. It was clarity. Family, I decided, would never again be defined by people who demanded I disappear so they could shine. Family meant those who asked me to bring a dish, share a memory, or simply sit beside them without judgment. Family was Maria's photo smiling back at me from the mantel, and the laughter of Rosa's children calling me uncle with genuine affection. It was neighbors who lent a hand, friends who stayed when the money stopped, and a son who, perhaps, might learn the difference between approval and respect. I no longer measured my life by what I provided to others at my expense. I measured it by the steadiness in my chest, the glow of my repaired porch light, and the freedom to raise a glass without shame. Dignity, I realized, was the richest inheritance I could keep for myself and pass on to anyone wise enough to receive it. If this story moved you, if you felt the sting of Dennis's betrayal and the power of his dignity restored, please take a moment to like this video. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story. And most importantly, share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you faced a moment when family forgot your sacrifices? When you were treated as if you didn't belong in a place you helped build? Your story matters. When you tell it here, you not only find your own strength, but you also help others see they are not alone. This community is built on voices of resilience, people who have learned to stand tall even when those closest tried to cut them down. And when you are ready for the next chapter, tap the box on the left. Another story of betrayal and justice is waiting for you there.